The new leads are often exciting, but sometimes the fastest path to growth is going to be the pipeline you've already earned, right? You've already talked to. And so if you can analyze your reactivated close rate, then by channel, by lead source, by month, you can double down, on the follow-up actions that'll win and stop wasting time on, some of the new leads that are just creating activity. And so what I want to show here are, a few ways to analyze this. One is going to be reactivated lead close rates, which is this here, based off of reactivated leads. And so we have, was the lead reactivated? Was it closed? What is the close rate? And then we're not really going to have a benchmark. What we're going to have is a 3-month sort of rolling average. And we're not going to take the average of these three. We're going to take the average of the sum of this divided by the sum of this to get a true sort of 3-month, moving average. Then we're going to break it down by lead source and then by your sort of your reactivated, methodology. Was it through email? Was it through, just reminding people, calls? And then we're also going to create this right here, which is just the count, meaning, if it's 0 or if it's less than a certain number, then you might not even want to analyze it. You might want to have it sort of set up to where, okay, if it's less than 5, we want to, a dash. But the way this is working now is that if it's 0, and so let's get started. In the data, what you're going to see here was a very sort of in-depth data set. And I have HVAC clients, and so I know this is, a lot of data. But what you're going to want is the main thing you need to calculate this type of stuff is reactivation sort of columns. And that's over here, starting in column AG. And to download this, there's a link to download it. If you can't find it, shoot me an email, which I'll give you my email here at the end. And so the first thing we want is a reactivation date, and then the channel, and then the reason. So financing approved, maybe the competitor didn't show up. And then also if it was closed, then you want to have the date and time of the close, and then also the reason, right? Like, was it lost? Was it won? So for example, this was reactivated, but then it was lost, right? And then this one was reactivated, but it was won. And so those columns are going to be very important. And then off here to the right, these green columns are the formulas we need to create. And I've already created all these formulas because I created this file. But what you would need is the lead source of the reactivation. So the way we can do that, and I'll just redo all of these over here just to show you here. But essentially, what we need is you can sort of pick any of these as long as there's always data, but we're going to use reactivation date and time. So if this is blank, then it means it was not reactivated. If it's not blank, then we want the lead source. So we can do an if statement. Make these a little bit wider. I'll leave them white. That's fine. I don't know why it's white, but so equals if over here, AG, which is the reactivation date and time, equals blank, then give me nothing, right? Just make it blank. Otherwise, give me the lead source right here in F. And so you can see, because this is in a table, everything, fills down, which is good. You don't have to, you don't have to drag the formula down. And then you also have a subsource. We're not using the subsource in this. We're going to use the lead source, but if you wanted to do the subsource, then we can redo that. And so from here equals if, you can do the same column on the reactivation date, equals if this equals blank, then blank otherwise, and then we want the subsource. So where is the subsource? Right here, subsource, right? G. Close your formula, and then you can see again, this also fills all the way down. And then the reactivation month, it's sort of the same thing, equals if this, where are you? Equals if this equals blank, then blank. Otherwise, we want the month. And so the way you get the month is with the text function. So we're going to use the text function, and then you can click here again, and then comma, and then it's going to be, with quotations, 4 M's. Let's see, I'm missing a right here. I need a bracket. Okay, so now you have the month. And then here for was reactivated flag, it's pretty much the same, the date and time. So we need zeros and ones, right? Because what we need is we need to count the number of reactivations versus the number of one reactivations. So here equals if I'm just using the reactivation date and time. Again, if any of these columns, as long as they're always data in them for anything reactivated, you can do that. Equals blank. If it's blank, it means it was not reactivated. So that's a 0. But if it's not blank, then it means it was reactivated, and that's a 1. So now you have ones and zeros here. And then you want, was it 1? Was the reactivation 1? So what we need is we need to make sure the reactivation date and time is not blank and the final status is closed in 1. You could also do it off of here. If and this is 1 and closed, right? And so I'll do that formula just to show you a new formula. So equals if and this equals 1 and this here equals closed 1. So if true, here I'll show you, like over here, it's sort of hidden, but right here. So value if true, 1, but value if false is 0. And now you can see that, you didn't get any wins until down here. Okay, so now that we have all these columns, we can start to recreate the actual insights that we're looking for. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to break it down by month, and then how many were reactivated, and then how many were won. So essentially the 2 columns we need, or the 3 columns are here. So this is to get the month, to count the months. This is to see if it was reactivated, and then this is to see if it was won. So what I'll do is first we want the month, and then just type in the word January, and I'll just center everything here. And then drag this down until you see December. And then I'll just copy and paste this, but essentially we need was reactivated, reactivated-won. Let's try that again. Copy, paste. So if it was reactivated, what we need to do, I'm going to show you the COUNTIFS function. We need to count if the column is 1 and January, right? But to be fair with this data, we can just count January, right? I'm going to do both just to show you the formula, but we can do just January because January wouldn't be there unless it was reactivated, right? So we can do count if this is 1 and this, comma, is January, which is cell B3. You can sort of see the blue behind here. Then you can double click that down. And then now we need to do if it's 1 in the 1, if it's the number 1 in the 1 WON, column. And so we can do a sum because it's 1 or 0. So a count of ones would be the same as the sum, right? And I'll do SUMIFS just to show you a new formula. So sum this column here, the reactivity, because if you remember in the other one, P3 is January, right? So you can sort of see here, it's still hiding it, but you can see it. And then you can double click that. And so now the reactivation close rate is super easy. It's just those 2 divided by each other. And we'll press Control-Shift-5 to make it a %. And then now we want the 3-month average, and we don't want the average of these 3. We want the average of this, or the sum of this divided by the sum of this to get the true moving average, because it's not good. It's not, good to take the average of the averages if you have the underlying data. So we want the sum of these 3 divided by the sum of these 3. And now you have a true average. And so let me just see. So what you can see, if we take the average of this, it looks the same, but it's just a little bit different, right? 46.5 versus 46.9. So it's not that big of a deal, but this is the proper way to do it. So, and then as you drag this down, you'll notice that everything is shifting down. So that's what we want here. And let me just do it the other way. So equals the average of these 3. And you can sort of see that sometimes it doesn't add up. Like there's a bigger variance. Oftentimes 24, 27, right? 32, 33. So this is a big one right here, because at the end it's okay, 2%, but the reality is it's 2 over 40, right? It's 2% over 40%. So it's actually, what is that? 5% off. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to create the chart. And what we're going to have, and you can do this a lot of different ways, but we're going to have this as reactivated, or you can do the one flag. Let's see how we did it here. So yeah, so this is reactivated. So we can do reactivated, hold down the control key, and then highlight the next two. Go to insert, and then recommended charts. And you can see this is sort of where we want to get, but it's not quite correct because it has the reactivated lead close rate as a column. And we don't want that. We want that to be on the secondary axis as well. And so what we do is we click all charts, combo, and then here we want this to be a line. And then for both of these, we don't want the 50% to be on the same axis as the number 20, right? Because it would be flat. So just click secondary axis, and now you get, we can call this, say, reactivated close rate by month. And so yeah, so you get that. Pretty straightforward on what this is saying. So essentially, if the red line dips below the green line, it means you're falling below your 3-month average. If the red line, is above your green line, then it means you're above your 3-month moving average. And if you want to see any values, you can, if you click on the chart and then the little crosshair and data labels, it gets super noisy. And so what you might want to do is just click on a certain one, like maybe just the line and then data labels. And then you can always, make it a little bit bigger, make it white, make it bold, however you want to do it. And then you can also move, like, let's say this one is a little bit annoying and in the way. You can just move this out of the way. But yeah. Okay, so that's sort of the first way to visualize this KPI. And another way we can do it is this heat map here. And so we have, the by the lead source and then by the reactivation method. And so what we want is in the bottom of the fraction, because this is a percentage, right? So it's a ratio of, something on the top divided by something on the bottom. And that something on the bottom is if it was reactivated, right? So out of the number of reactivated, how many were 1? And so what we'll do is first we need to get a unique list of the lead source, and I'll just type in lead source here and here. So we want to get a unique list of the lead source, and the way we can do that, lead source, is we want to say equals unique, and then here in the table, you can see you have the lead source. So we don't want PPC to be there twice, right? We just want one. So equals unique, and then you can get the table, the heading of the table, and you can see right here, let me move my big head out of the way. You can see that you have a unique list of the lead source. Now we're going to remove the formula. So Control-C, Control-Shift-V to remove the formula. Okay, so the next thing we want is we want the email nurture, right? The member reminder, right? So the reactivation method, essentially, and that's going to be way over here. Right, where are you? Right here, the reactivation channel. So we want the unique list of this. And it's same process, equals unique, and we know the name of the table is table reactivated, so we don't even have to go into the data because we're using a table. We can just type in the table name, and then we want, reactivation channel, close your bracket, right? And so now you have everything, but clearly we don't want a 0 in that. So just highlight everything, Control-C, Control-Shift-V, and then we can sort this alphabetically. So go to data and then AZ. Well, let me remove that. Let's drag this down and then see if this works. Yeah. Okay, so the next thing we want is we want to put this on the top, and I'll show you a little trick. This is annoying, right? We don't want to do that. Just highlight everything, press Control-C to copy, and then you can right-click ST, T as in Tom, and then that will sort of transpose. That's what the T stands for, transpose. And what I'll do, let me do it again, and I'll show you what's actually happening. So again, copy, and then right-click paste special, transpose, and now you have it like that. Delete that. Okay, so I'm going to copy this, paste it here, and then from here, we want to get the count of the number of times it was for PPC, the lead source, and the reactivation channel, how many were reactivated, not sold, but just reactivated. And so we want to COUNTIFS, and then again, if you remember the table name is table reactivated. So from here, we want, you can do, what was it, reactivation channel. Here is this, comma, and then in the data, I'll just show it to you. So like reactivation flag here, comma 1, because that's a yes, comma, and then we want reactivated, let's see, what was the final one? Oh, lead source. So lead source is going to be here, reactivated lead source, comma, is, let me just click there and I'll just go up here. And so you can see we have 5. And then now we want to just drag this over and down, but you'll see there's an error. And what you'll see in the red here is that we need to lock the cells. This is called relative referencing. So as you move it over, everything in the formula moves over. And we need to not have that happen. So wherever you see the column, like the reference in this sheet, we need to lock that. So we need to lock this, and we need to lock this. I'm going to delete that because we're in the sheet. We don't need it. And so wherever you want, we want to lock where email nurture, it moves over, but as we drag it down, we don't want that to change. And for the lead source, as we move it over, we don't want it to change, but as we drag it down, we do want it to change. And so you can put the $ here before the number, right? So we want to lock the row, and the rows are, or the number in Excel are the rows. And then here we want to lock the column. And the first thing you'll notice is that, again, if we try to drag this over, there's an error. And this is the nature of tables. You'll see that reactivation channel changes to reactivation reason. But if you copy and then paste, everything makes sense. So the final thing we want to do is we want to just see how to get the close rate in this here. And I'll show you how to create that formula. So we need to, in the denominator of the formula, it'll be exactly like this, right? Because this is how many were reactivated. So what we can do is I'll show you equals, and then paste that here, but we need to sort of drag this up. Well, just so you don't have to redo the formula. Here, so we have this. So this is, again, the bottom of the fraction. We need to find out the top. And the top is going to be essentially this exact same formula, but what we're going to do is we're going to add closed as well. So I'm just going to divide and then paste the same thing. So we're going to get 1. But here, what we can do is we can then go here, and then we have reactivated-won flag, and then comma 1. And you can see for PPC, in email nurture, it was, 20% out of 5, which is 1, right? So 1 out of 5 is the same as 20%. So that is good. And then what else? Yep. So Control-Shift-5 to make it a percentage. Make sure to copy and paste. Don't drag it, because remember the tables will change. And then Control-V. And the first thing you're going to notice is there are some errors. And the reason there's an error here is because it's 0. And if you remember your math days, you can't divide by 0. So I'm going to add if error to this, and then sort of at the very end, do a comma, and I'll just add a dash like that. Copy, Control-Shift-right arrow, Control-Shift-down arrow, Control-V. And now you can see a dash. And the difference between a 0 and a dash means that the denominator, the bottom, there was nothing for referral, ping, and Facebook meta ads. So you can't divide by 0. The difference with the 0 is that for Yelp directories member reminder, you have 2, which means 0 out of 2. So that there is a stark difference between those two. And then the final thing I want to add here is just to show you, well, 2 things. I want to add the target cell. So let's say we have a target me make this a little narrow, a target of say 40%. So now we want to conditional format anything less than 40%. So go to highlight your range, go to home, conditional formatting, highlight cells, less than, and then click on the cell here. Okay. And you'll notice that the dashes aren't changing, which is fine. But if you want to change that specific color of that dash, then you can again highlight your range, go to conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, text that contains, and then a dash. And it's defaulting to red. So we don't want that. Let's just do custom format, go to fill, and then you can just pick a gray out or something. And then now you can see that. And so now you have a dynamic changing cell, right? So everything will change based on the value of your target sort of reactivation lead close rate. And then one last thing before I go is I want to show you how to add a word into this cell. Like this says target, dash 40%. But if you were just to type that in there, target dash 40%, it's not going to work because it's text. And so what we need to tell Excel is like, hey, Excel, we want this to be formatted as a number, but we don't want, and we want it to have the word target, but we don't want it to be, text like it is now. So go to type in the 40%, press Control-1 to get the format cell dialog box, go to number, go to custom, and then before the percentage, type your quotations, target, dash, and then quotations again. And then you'll see when I do that, like you'll see, it already did it. You'll see how this changes up here, the sample. And so now you have to where it works. And let me just make this a blue or something. But anyways, so that is all I got for this video, 23 minutes almost. And so it's just, it takes a long time to set up the problem. And that's what, that's what takes 15 of the 22 minutes. But anyways, that's all I got for this one. If you have any questions about this, if you can't find the file, just shoot me an email, questions@databoards.io. Just make sure to tell me like, hey Ryan, can you send me the file for reactivated lead close rate? You'll see it. You can see it up here in the video because this is exactly how it's going to be saved, because I'm doing 160 to 200 videos, for HVAC. It's just from stuff I've learned over the years. And so if you need some help structuring your data in a proper way to be used, shoot me an email, or there's a form to hop on my calendar, a link to a form. But anyways, that's all I got for this one, and I will see you in future videos.